The release of Jeffrey Epstein files was supposed to be a deal. It was supposed to show that the government is being honest with people. It has actually caused a lot of trouble. The Trump administration is in trouble now. Some important people at the Justice Department are also in trouble. People are starting to question if the government can really enforce the law. The release of Jeffrey Epstein files has started a fight. This fight is getting bigger and bigger. It is going to affect the Trump administration and the Justice Department and the way people think about the government. The government is supposed to be fair and make sure people follow the rules. Now people are not so sure about that. The release of Jeffrey Epstein files was supposed to make things clear. It has just made a big mess. This all started because the law said some information had to be made public. Now it is a big fight between the people who make laws, the Department of Justice, and a lot of people on the internet who are checking facts. The main problem is that people are saying the Trump administration did not follow the law even though they said they were being very open. The fact is, people on the internet are pointing out mistakes and everyone can see them. The Trump administration is at the center of this fight because people think they broke the law. The Department of Justice and lawmakers are also involved in this argument. People are using fact checks to show when the Trump administration is not telling the truth, and a lot of people are seeing this. The Epstein case has been a mystery for a long time. It has made a lot of people wonder what really happened. Survivors of the Epstein case and journalists and lawmakers have been asking for answers for years. They want to know who was helped and what information was hidden. They also want to know why nobody has been held responsible for what happened. In 2024, people finally started to get some answers. Or at least that is what it seems like on paper. The Epstein case is still very important to a lot of people. They want to know the truth about the Epstein case. The Epstein Files Transparency Act said that the Department of Justice had to make all the information about Epstein public by December 19 except for the parts that would hurt the victims. This law was created by Thomas Massie, a congressman from Kentucky, and Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California. The law was very clear. Did not leave much room for the Department of Justice to decide what to do. They were only allowed to keep secret the names of victims and minors, not the names of politicians or other important people who might be embarrassed by the information about Epstein. When the deadline finally arrived, people were expecting to understand things. What they got was just the opposite. The public was left feeling confused. The deadline came and went, and instead of clarity, the public received confusion. The Department of Justice said it did not give out hundreds of thousands of files about Epstein. The Department of Justice did give out some documents. It blacked out a lot of the information in them. Away lawyers and lawmakers who make laws said that the Department of Justice was not allowed to black out that much information. They said the Department of Justice was supposed to give out information about Epstein because of a law that says they have to. The people in charge of the Trump administration were really happy. They went on social media to say they won. They were talking about the Trump administration and how the Trump administration did a job. The Trump administration officials were very excited to share their news about the Trump administration. Important people said that the release showed how open the administration was being. They liked that the administration was being transparent and following the rules. Not everyone agreed with what these important people were saying. For the time, it was not just reporters or people against the administration who were speaking out against these claims. The administration's commitment to transparency and the rule of law was being questioned by others. Well, this thing did not come from else. It actually came from the internet itself. The internet itself is where it really came from. On X, the platform that used to be called Twitter, people started adding community notes to things that the government said. These community notes are like fact checks that lots of people help with. They added corrections to what the government said. These corrections were very clear. They did not try to be nice about it. They said that the Department of Justice and people who work for Trump did things that were against the law. The community notes on X said this about the Department of Justice and Trump officials. One note said the Justice Department did things that were not right according to the law. This was the opposite of what they were saying. Another note said the administration was protecting people who do bad things like pedophiles and rapists. This language was very surprising to people who are used to seeing strong opinions about politics online. The Justice Department and the administration were being accused of doing things that were not right. The Republican lawmaker who made the files public was watching everything happen. It seemed like they were happy about it. They were the one who started it all by making the files available to everyone. The Republican lawmaker was seeing the results of their actions. They appeared to be pleased with what was happening. Congressman Thomas Massie is a man who likes to do things his way even if that means going against his own party. He was really happy about people speaking out against the government. Congressman Thomas Massie wrote on a post that got a lot of attention that community notes are showing that the government is not always telling the truth. Congressman Thomas Massie thinks this is a thing because it means the government has to be honest. He sees it as people holding the government accountable for what they say and do. For Massie, the problem was bigger than being loyal to his party. He had said from the start that doing things halfway would not be accepted. Now the administration was dealing with the fallout, not just from courts or Congress but from millions of people online who had proof and pictures of what was happening. Massie had made it clear that partial compliance was not going to work. The administration was facing the consequences of Massie's warnings. Inside Washington, the implications were immediate and unsettling. People who study the law started asking if the Department of Justice was hiding things that could get officials in trouble. Some people who want the government to be more open said that only telling part of the story could make people think that important people can do whatever they want and not get in trouble. This whole thing also brought up something that's very sensitive in American politics, the fact that we still do not know everything about Jeffrey Epstein and his connections to powerful people. This moment was different because of a couple of things. It was not about what the moment was about but also how we found out about it. The thing that really made this moment stand out was the way we got to know about the matter of this moment. For a time, the government had problems with people believing them. These problems usually came to light through newspaper investigations, court cases, and official documents. Now, when the government makes a mistake, they have to correct it right away. These corrections show up online under the official statements so anyone can see them when they scroll through. There is no waiting, no one to filter the information, and no way for the government to take back what they said without everyone seeing it. The government corrections are visible to everyone because they are posted online for anyone to see. Government corrections. A former official from the Department of Justice said something in private that really stood out. The administration was not just fighting people who did not like them, the Department of Justice official said. It was fighting the facts, the receipts that proved what was really going on. And this was only the beginning. So what is really going on behind the missing files, the parts that were taken out, and the community notes that show things do not add up? There is a more serious question about the missing files, the unlawful redactions, and the community notes exposing contradictions. A question that the Department of Justice and the White House have not answered yet. The question about the missing files, the unlawful redactions, and the community notes exposing contradictions is still there. What, exactly, is still being hidden, and who is being protected by the silence? The Epstein files issue was not about blacking out information and meeting deadlines anymore. It became a problem that made people question if the Department of Justice was really doing its job under the Trump administration. The Epstein files controversy was getting worse and worse. It was now a challenge to the Department of Justice and the way it was being run under the Trump administration. The Epstein files were causing a lot of trouble. The problem started because people in Washington realized that the administration was not just taking a time to follow the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It seemed like they were completely ignoring it. Experts who study the law, former prosecutors, and people who fight for liberties started saying that the law is very clear. The law says that you can only remove information to protect the people who were hurt and kids. If you try to hide information to protect political people or government officials, that is against the law. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is supposed to make sure everything is out, in the open. It looks like the administration is not doing that with the Epstein files. That is what the critics are saying happened with this situation. The critics say that is what happened. The Department of Justice said that they are still holding back hundreds of thousands of documents about Epstein. The documents they did release had black marks covering up names, dates, and important details. Some of these documents were really hard to read. This made people wonder if the government is just slow or if they are hiding something on purpose about Epstein. The Department of Justice and their actions with the Epstein documents are causing a lot of suspicion. When people shared the documents on the internet, independent researchers and journalists started looking at the parts that were blacked out in the documents that were made public. They compared these documents with things they already knew about. Some things started to make sense. Big parts that talked about people were not there. The order of events was all mixed up. The documents did not clearly show how some things were related to the documents, and the connections between them were not clear. It seemed like someone did this on purpose to make it hard to understand the documents and the connections between them. This big difference made people really angry over again. The anger did not just stay in Washington. It spread out far, from Capitol Hill. On media, the Trump administration officials tried to manage what people were talking about. Important people from the administration said things about the Department of Justice, saying they were being very open. They said that the fact they were releasing some information was proof that the Trump administration was not hiding anything. This plan did not work out well for the Trump administration. Under post after post, community notes showed up. These notes were short and to the point, really damaging. They had proof to back them up. They were different from the arguments people usually make when they disagree with something. The community notes used the words of the law. They quoted the Epstein Files Transparency Act word for word. Explained how what the Department of Justice did went against what the law says. The community notes used the Epstein Files Transparency Act to make their point. There is a note from the community that says the Department of Justice is not doing what the law says. The Department of Justice made a lot of marks on papers so we cannot see what is written. This note says that is not okay. Another note says the people in charge are not telling the truth to the public. They are hiding things so that important people do not get in trouble. The community notes are talking about the Department of Justice. What they are doing. This was a thing. For the time, people were checking what the government said was true right after they said it. They did this under the thing the government said. The government did not have time to change what they said. They had to say what they meant. The government statements were being checked to see if they were true. This was happening very quickly right after the government made the statements. Inside the Justice Department, the fallout was palpable. People who used to work at the agency say that the people who work there are not happy. The lawyers who have been working there for a time are really worried. They think that the people who were appointed by politicians are doing things that could get the agency in trouble with the law. Some of the lawyers are scared that the Epstein files could be looked at again by people in charge or even by the courts now. They are worried that the people who handled the Epstein files could get in trouble for what they did with the Epstein files. The Epstein files are a deal, and some people think that the agency did not handle the Epstein files correctly. The concern was not theoretical. Congressman Thomas Massey said the law he helped write is not for show. He said that if people at the Department of Justice do not follow the law completely, they could get in trouble with the law. What Congressman Thomas Massie did was not normal for a lawmaker when the administration is also Republican. It showed that the issue of the law is very important to people, on both sides, not just one party. The law that Congressman Thomas Massie helped write is a deal. Massie thinks that this controversy is a test to see if the laws that Congress makes really matter when they go against people like big companies or rich individuals. The question is, do the laws that Congress passes still mean something when powerful interests are at stake, according to Massie? Massie is looking at the situation as a way to find out if Congress laws are still important. The people who support the administration started to change their approach. They stopped talking about being open and honest. Instead, they started to question the people who were criticizing them. They said the critics were only speaking out because of politics or because they believed in theories. This did not work for the administration either. The documents were really there. It was obvious what the law said. And you could see the parts that were blacked out. The redactions were there. In front of you, the redactions were pretty clear. The Epstein case was a deal because of what it meant to people. For a lot of Americans, the Epstein case is an example of how the people in charge do not get in trouble when they do something wrong. The Epstein case shows that the system is not fair. It hurts people who are already struggling, but it helps people who are powerful. When people thought the government was hiding the truth about the Epstein case again, that made them really angry. The Epstein case brought up a lot of feelings about the government and the people in charge. People who study opinion saw a big increase in the number of people who do not trust the Department of Justice after this controversy. Some groups that speak out on issues said that people are losing faith in the law enforcement, and this is a bad time for that to happen because the Department of Justice is already not seen as legitimate by many people. The Department of Justice is having a time, and this is making things worse. Some people who work with the administration were talking behind doors. They were wondering if all the trouble was really worth it. These people were scared that the files might have some information in them that was not against the law. It could still be very bad for them if everyone found out. Other people were worried that if they kept fighting, the whole problem would just drag on and on. They did not want Epstein's name to be in the news all the time because of all the things that people think of when they hear that name. But retreat was no longer an option. The problem had gotten really big by this point. It was not about missing papers anymore. The issue was now about something bigger. It was about whether the laws that make people be transparent are fair to everyone. Do these transparency laws apply to everyone? Only when it is easy to follow them? The issue was really about transparency laws. How they affect people. Transparency laws are supposed to make sure everyone is honest and open. Now people were wondering if transparency laws really apply to everyone or just some people. So legal analysts started looking at what might happen with things like court cases, meetings with Congress, and possibly sending cases to criminal court. One thing became very clear. The Epstein files controversy was not about what had been released. It was about the Epstein files themselves. People were talking about the Epstein files. What they really meant. The Epstein files were a deal, and everyone was still trying to figure out what to make of the Epstein files. It was about what was still missing, and why the government seemed so determined to keep it that way. When the Epstein files situation got to its peak, it was not just a problem for the Justice Department or Congress anymore. The Epstein files had become a deal in courts, in rooms where politicians plan their campaigns, in newsrooms where reporters work, and it had really gotten into people's minds, which was the biggest problem of all, with the Epstein files. This thing that was supposed to happen by a time was not done, and it was not a big deal at first. Now it has become a big problem for the Trump administration. The Trump administration is being tested to see if they can be trusted. The Trump administration has to show that they are doing what they said they would do. This is a challenge for the Trump administration. The people who study the law are now saying that the administration may have done something that cannot be easily fixed. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was made to stop people from showing part of the information. The words used in this act were chosen carefully. They are strict and do not allow for many exceptions. The Epstein Files Transparency Act does not give the power to hide information just to protect someone's reputation, avoid being embarrassed, or deal with the effects of a political decision. The Epstein Files Transparency Act only allows information to be hidden to protect the victims and minors. That is all the Epstein Files Transparency Act allows. The redactions were still there. Former federal prosecutors talked to a lot of people. They said the Department of Justice's position is not going to hold up in court. The Department of Justice position is just not strong enough. Several of these federal prosecutors warned that if the Department of Justice does not comply, senior officials at the Department of Justice could get in trouble. They could even get subpoenas from Congress. Some former federal prosecutors even said that if the Department of Justice is breaking the law on purpose, that could be a problem. It could be seen as obstruction by the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is supposed to follow the law and be transparent. The people in charge have not been doing much about this problem. They have been taking their time. Not really doing anything. They keep saying it is not their fault and they do not want to deal with it. The administration has been slow to respond. They keep denying that anything is wrong. The people in charge say they will make more papers available in phases. They have not said when this will happen. Some people think this is a way to slow things down. They believe that the officials are doing this on purpose to keep people from paying attention to the issue for long so they can still control what people find out about the documents and the information in them, specifically the documents. That plan is not working out like it was supposed to. The strategy we are talking about may already be failing. People who watch to see if the government is being honest have filed lawsuits. They want the government to tell them everything now. Some Democrats in Congress are talking about having meetings to see if the Department of Justice is following the law. Even some Republican lawmakers are starting to back from this issue. They do not like how it looks. They are worried that it could hurt them in the next election. The Department of Justice and the controversy surrounding it could become a problem for politicians in the upcoming election year. Transparency watchdog groups are pushing for this because they want transparency from the government. When you think about it, the thing that is really scary is not just what is in those files. What it means that they are being kept secret. The files themselves are a deal, but the fact that people are trying to hide them is even more troubling. What are they trying to cover up? Why do they not want us to know what the files contain? The files are important. The fact that they are being suppressed is really what is causing all the fear. The government is supposed to follow the law. When they do not do what the law says, especially when it comes to people, that is a problem. People who are against this ask a question. What does this mean for fairness in our system? Does the law treat everyone the same? Do some people get special treatment? The law is supposed to be fair to everyone. This does not seem to be the case when the government ignores the law for powerful individuals like these powerful individuals. This is what critics are saying about justice under the law and powerful individuals. The question we are talking about has a lot to do with Epstein. It also goes way beyond him, and that is what makes the question about Epstein so important. People have been losing faith in the system for a time. This has been happening faster because of fighting between parties, false information, and big mistakes that were not punished. The Epstein case is an example of all these things. It is rich and powerful people, secrets, and people who were hurt and nobody listened to them. The Epstein case shows us what happens when these things come together. It is a deal because it involves people with a lot of money and power and secrets that were kept hidden. The people who were hurt in the Epstein case were ignored for a time. Every time a document's missing, it makes people think that things are still the same. Every missing document is a reminder that nothing has changed with the missing documents. The community has really stepped up when it comes to fact-checking. Community notes are being shared fast, and this is changing the official stories as they happen. This is stopping information from being believed as true. For a lot of people, this is a moment. It shows that the people in charge cannot totally control what everyone is talking about. Community-driven fact-checking is making a difference. Community notes are not able to make people follow the law. The law is still the law, and community notes cannot force people to comply with it. Community notes do not have that kind of power over the community. Only courts and Congress can. So this is where the story is going now. The story is going to take a turn. The story is what we are focusing on. Some lawyers who know a lot about the law think that judges will have to decide if the Department of Justice is breaking the law by hiding some information. The Department of Justice is hiding some information. If the courts get involved, they might say that the Department of Justice has to make all the hidden information public away. This could mean the administration of the Department of Justice will not be able to control what information is made public about the Department of Justice. Such a ruling would be explosive. This is not about finding out if someone did something. It is about finding out if the government tried to hide things from us, which is against the law. If we find out that the government did try to hide things, it will be very bad for them, no matter what the documents actually say. The government will be in trouble if we discover that they tried to conceal information from us. For President Trump, this is a deal. It is personal. It is about politics. Jeffrey Epstein is an important person who has connections to powerful people. If people think that President Trump's team is helping people who know Epstein, it will hurt President Trump's reputation. No matter what President Trump says, he cannot completely fix this problem. President Trump and his team have to be careful about what they do with regards to Jeffrey Epstein. For lawmakers like Thomas Massie, this moment is about something than just being loyal to their party. It is about what they believe in. Thomas Massie and other lawmakers have to think about what's right for them, not just what their party wants. This is about the laws that Congress makes. Do these laws really mean anything when they go against people who already have a lot of power? Does being open and honest only matter when it is easy? The question is whether transparency is important or if it only matters when it is convenient. The laws made by Congress are what we are talking about. A person who used to work at the Department of Justice said something that really stands out. This person said, "If this law does not work, then every future law that is supposed to make things transparent will be ignored." The Department of Justice official is talking about the importance of this law and how it will affect transparency laws. If this law fails, it will set an example for every future transparency law, and that is what the Department of Justice official is worried about. The shadow is now hanging over Washington. This is a scary situation for Washington. The shadow is really looming over Washington. The Epstein files are more than pieces of paper. They show us if the people in charge are honest. What happens to the rest of the Epstein files will tell us a lot. If they are made public, or if the hidden parts are shown, or if people are held responsible, it will show what kind of example is being made. This will affect not the current administration, but also the Epstein files will affect the ones that come after them, the future administrations, and how they handle the Epstein files. For now, the public waits. The law has made its decision. That is final. The law has said what it thinks. We have to listen to the law. The files are not finished yet. The files remain incomplete because something is missing from the files. We need to add more to the files so that the files can be complete. The time of reckoning, whether it is legal or political or maybe even both, has not come yet. The reckoning is still something that the people involved are waiting for. But one thing is clear. This story is not ending quietly.